Pandemic has changed our world in so many ways. This is one of the good ways. For me, it's been an amazing experience to start to work teaching online and seeing more clients online. I've been teaching hypnotherapy and past life therapy for about 35 years. And never in my life would I ever imagine myself doing online teaching. As a matter of fact, I would tell people all the time, oh, you can't do this online. And what's happened for me is probably what's happened for all of you, is that you're forced to make changes. And the changes for me have been an absolute wonder and delight. I have students from all over now, where I was just from the Bay Area previously, or California primarily. And I'm having all kinds of new experiences because of the diversity of the people I'm getting to meet and work with. And the world has expanded for me. So I think that'll be your experience as well once you get the hang of it and have the courage to go ahead and start using some of these tools we're going to talk about tonight. And we will be sending you an outline of all the information that we're presenting, as well as some resources for you. That'll be emailed to you after we're complete tonight. And this is going to be filmed on video, and it will be available online on our website, probably in a day or two. And then we're also going to put it on a YouTube channel, so that we will be collecting videos of the presentations that we're going to sponsor now. And a big, big, big invitation to all of you to consider being a part of these little seminars we're doing. We want your expertise and your passions to get to shine and participate. So let us know. We want volunteers. Yeah. So think about what your specialties are, what your passions are, what unique things you have to offer, and please connect with us and we'll get you on the agenda for our future presentations, because I think we're committing ourselves to wanting to expand this organization and certainly have more opportunity to learn and share with each other. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you now to Greg. He's going to be our kind of facilitator through this whole thing, and he will introduce you to Georgina when it's her turn to present. The three of us have been working since, I don't know, January was when we started to brainstorm this, to put this together for you. We're very excited about it and hope that you'll get what you need from it tonight. Pass it on to your clients and students. So Greg.
Hello, I have a practice in Denver. I've been working in this and regression and spirit releasement for 20 years. And I know some of you well, Peter Wright, for one, dear friend, really wonderful guy. And it's fun working with Janet and Holly and Kiki and Georgina, figuring all this stuff out. And so we were looking at how to use the presence of the board and the organization to help the members. And so what we're doing is trying to generate that sense of community, which is already there or here, and see what we have to learn from each other, and in particular about doing things virtually, which is just kind of mind-blowing. When we came up with the name of this meeting, essence, you might say, virtual regression, who would have thunk, And so it's a great thing. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is in working with Zoom, my experience, and then I'm going to talk about working with clients spiritually, and Georgina will come in with working with individuals, I believe, and then Holly's going to talk about groups and the legal and ethical issues involved, which are kind of complex depending on which state you work in. So the concept of reaching out to individuals through this through the virtual world of visual and sound is really awesome if you think about the power of it and how that's manifesting. And so when I work with individuals online, I work with them in a sense of that they're coming to me and I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know what their process is going to be like, but I do know that they're coming to meet me is going to be where they've already gotten help before they called or before they emailed me. And so I consciously, though not openly, but consciously, before meeting with someone online, uh, I make prayer for their well-being, and that what happens with them when they come to join with me on a screen of all things is that love be the response answer between the two of us, whatever the process is, whatever the content. Now, that's not different than if someone comes to my office, but it is different. Um, it has the potential for great impact, and there's an element, I believe, of trusting in that prayer being manifested in the therapy session. Now, in terms of spirituality or spiritually, working with someone, a lot of what I do is mixed with the protocols for spirit releasement therapy that I learned from Bill Baldwin and others in their work, and what I've brought in myself. And often it's intertwined with their own spiritual consciousness and how they're being with themselves. So working with them virtually in doing regression work and spirit releasement work in video format with audio is really different. It involves letting go of how you used to be with them one-on-one, and letting go and finding out as an adventure how it is to see and receive from them in ways that aren't even on the screen, of course, but more so. I think that it behooves us to be trusting in our own guidance and intuition in listening to the person, even though the virtualness is supposed to enhance that person's presence. It requires of us that we listen more than we used to. Because when you're with a person in your office, you're looking at their pinstripe suit or the shoes, or you're thinking distracting thoughts. Well, I do that, and you're not prone to listening as well as virtual regression can make you. It creates an environment where you're focused in a different way, and so that you can receive in ways that are much more intuitive. Not that you're going to tell them what their problems are, but the listeningness, the receptivity that this makes the work more prone to is really part of a deeper healing process that we're all learning about. So when I work in the beginning, of course I ask them about their spiritual orientation, because I'm going to utilize it in the work. I'm going to utilize their sense of having experiences with the divine in some way, and they're utilizing their relationship that they have with the divine. And I'll talk to them about that. Not if they don't have one, I'll encourage them, and I'll encourage them to enter into different practices that are suitable for them. And usually by the end, well, I would say maybe 80% of the time, by the time a person exits the session, they're in a high altered state because of divine presence that they've leaned into in the session, or has leaned into them. giving them that recognition of how they are in the session, whether it's they're in your face, across the room, a few feet away, or on a Zoom video, is recognizing how much authority they already have for their own healing. And I help them make prayer for their higher self, or however they address God for themselves, to come and be with them at different stages, very explicitly sometimes. And for instance, if I'm doing a regression and we've identified a theme, let's say of abandonment, which is common, and I'll say, so ask the spirit of the divine that loves you unconditionally to help you today, now, to be led to how this came about, how this was created, this pattern of experience. And they're doing it. That's a very critical element that is involved in one-on-one and then in the virtual work. Now, one of the things that I avoid personally is trying to tell them how they're supposed to be in this. And that is true in the virtual sessions also. If I recognize something about in their process of how they're being, I won't be dictating about how they should be about it. I find that honoring how they are, their own being, helps me receive them. And that process, which is often not explicit, makes all the difference in the healing process. There's one thing that we talked about a little bit in our panel group that is important, that the therapist, whether you're working one-on-one or through Zoom, needs to have a consciousness of their own competency in doing this work. And most of you probably do. I know a couple of you, and I know that you're great workers and excellent therapists. And so that having that sense of your own competency, bringing that into the video affects how the person is in the short run and the long run. There are some things that we've discussed that are different in doing the one-on-one through video than in person. And that is when a person is going through catharsis or is having an abreaction. I really don't like that word at all, but I'm using it because it's commonly understood. That the therapist needs to know that those tools that he or she used in the past to facilitate deepening into catharsis in a safe way, or in rescuing someone in abreaction and using that as a healing process. Those tools are the same. And you might have apprehension about, well, I'm afraid to do this. What if the person wigs out? You are closer to them than you are in physical form because of your intention to bring healing to them. And that intimacy, that intention for intimacy is the greatest tool that you have. And it can become enhanced in virtual work. I do a lot of work on the phone. I know some people think that's not quite cool, but it works for me because of this sense of intimacy. And catharsis and abreactions are sometimes very important in the healing process. And so when you're working with someone through a media that constrains how you can be with them, then you need to trust in your own innovation about bringing about resources to, in effect, rescue them or bring them into a deepening of that, so that if it's catharsis, it works. And there are realizations that take place. In that process, I use angels quite often. And so if a person is in catharsis or they're having a hard time, I may invite a particular angel that I'm familiar with to come and be with them in that experience. If it's too much, then I'll say, fear not, we're going to remove you from that. When I count to 3, you'll find yourself lifted up out of that trauma and safe. And some of you, most of you, are probably familiar with that kind of how to deal with a trauma reaction experience. But know that when it's happening, that being in the theme of that I call it the sanskara, that the essence of that field that they're dwelling in around, and the issues that they came to you with, is not to be overlooked at all, but to help them in it. So another thing about working with clients spiritually is conveying to them how you care about them in ways that are not obvious. In this work, I find that through a visual regression or a spirit releasement, that the spirit of love and healing is actually more prevalent than in a one-on-one session. And the clients feel that, obviously, like I'm preaching to the choir here, but that this goes on because of your intention, my intention. And there's something about the medium that allows it to be even broader and deeper, so that the love that they feel that you carry as your spiritual purpose for them is affecting them. And even more so, I think, than in person. Let's see. Anybody have questions so far? I'm entertaining questions. Okay, I had a question for everyone that's here for tonight or today, is how many of you have done or are using virtual media tools for your work in regression work?
I do.
Okay. Is there anybody that isn't? Okay.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Who said that?
Donna Nowak, Cleveland.
Okay. All right, Donna. Good. So you may have learnings that come to you through this little workshop that we're doing that help you feel comfortable and move into that. Okay.
I've been using that a lot. Hello?
Hello, I'm listening.
My name is Barbara Pisick. I come from New York City. Can you hear
Uh-huh.
me?
Yes, I hear
I
you.
use, I've probably been doing the regression work for 25 years, and I just started working through Zoom because of the pandemic. And I'm really shocked at how well it works.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In other words, I've been doing regression as well as traditional psychotherapy in my office, and now I'm not in my office. And people are very comfortable with using Zoom. I'm really surprised.
Yeah,
And how quickly they go under and they're open to it. It's amazing.
good. Glad for your experience.
Greg,
What
this-
about other people? Are you using it?
I wanted to ask a question real quick. How much time do you allot?
My sessions are usually 45 minutes for inquiry. It seems to have worked out that way for me. And then another 45 minutes to an hour for the actual session in altered state or trance. So in my calendar, I do 2 to 2.5 hours of space for them.
And the answer to your question is I have done them and I have had them done on me virtual.
Good. Good. Okay, thank you for that.
I want to add one thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you? You know, I was so shocked to think of doing it on Zoom, thinking about being professional, until I went online and began to see all these psychics were doing regression therapy work. That prompted me to just go online and started working with people.
And doing it
Because
right.
yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I'm professional. Am I doing the right thing? Or am I a woo-woo psychic? You know?
That's good, Barbara. That's great.
I couldn't resist.
Anybody else? Virginia? Kiki?
Yeah, I have a question, and I'm gonna put this question to all of our panelists and hopefully get all kinds of cool answers. But I have been doing remote sessions, and this happened today. It's happened quite a lot, but it's happened today. The connection in my office sometimes becomes very unstable, and I use Zoom, and it will freeze or drop completely. And I'm not sure how to do an age regression. I've done it, and when it freezes up, I can't tell if they're aware. I have no control over what they're experiencing when it's frozen or dropped completely. How do you handle the situation when your connection becomes unstable? What do you do?
Well, I try to prevent it in the first place. So have an Ethernet cable from the wireless modem directly to the computer. So in effect, I'm using high-speed cable instead of the downgrade that comes in by the wireless. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, but that's not an option
Why
in my
not?
office.
Yeah, sure it is.
The way it's set up, I can't run a cable from the modem up 2 flights of stairs to my office.
Well, you could get a carpenter and drill some holes.
I'm going to be talking about that a little
I'm just
later.
being a wise ass, but I'm sure
Not helpful.
that you could run that in certain ways. So the answer to make it stable is have it more direct to the internet cable source.
And Georgina's going to talk about that specifically in a few minutes.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to Georgina now, and maybe you can talk about how you work with clients and your learning and what it's like for you.
Sure. As a disclosure, a couple of things. I'm in Toronto, by the way, up north. And as a disclosure, when I've been teaching and facilitating hypnosis and past life regression and life between lives since 1997, 98. And who knew, as you were saying, Greg, who knew? And I would teach at the University of Toronto, and in the end of March this year, we got the directive that we were all going online, no more classroom.
Well,
It was just in the middle of the second semester, so we've had one weekend in class, and then everybody had to go online. Now, this is interesting. I've always longed for a 12-year-old neighbor to come and help me with the computer, because I'm not exactly what I would call 12 years old. So what I did in my rush was ask a neighbor who wasn't 12, and she helped me a little. Then I went onto YouTube. And by the way, YouTube has everything you ever want to know about working on Zoom or Skype, including working with PowerPoint on Zoom, working with the whiteboard on Zoom. And if you have the patience and allow yourself to be wrong or to make mistakes, And my dear sister and my neighbor were my compatriot as I Zoomed them and used these things and played around with it. And now I feel very comfortable. All of the university courses are either on Quercus or on Zoom, and I use Zoom all the time. If you're unfamiliar, when you're unfamiliar with something, we tread very, very carefully. But if you're upfront with your client or whoever you're working with, and you say, we're all learning on the job here. So let's forgive each other if something goes wrong, because clients do. They suddenly get up and walk around, not realizing that they're on camera. Because you have to remember, when you're on camera, unlike in a room, in a clinic room, your face and your body and your hands are all the focus. That's all the people can see. That's all your client can see. So anything you do, any minute you look away, if you look on a phone or you look at another screen, you're breaking that contact. So it's important to know that. It's important to know that what they see is just this. So if you have, like I have, an eye infection, you talk about that up front. You say, by the way, I have an eye infection, so please excuse me, or whatever you want to say, because otherwise they'll be looking at you and saying, what's wrong with her? Or what's wrong with him? There's something wrong. And they get caught up in that because all they have is that small picture, like a snapshot. So it's critically important that you remember you're always on camera. So one of the things that happens with clients is they're a bit scared about it. Why are they scared? Well, first of all, every woman I know, or most women I know, don't like being on camera unless they happen to be J-Lo, right? So because they're all worried about their hair or what they're wearing or what they look like or all of that. Once you get over that, and you have to encourage your client to get over that. It's not a question of being on camera, it's a question of being with you.
Right.
I'm with you. So it's not, it's not anything to do with the camera. And once you start talking with them about that, they feel more comfortable and they relax. There's also a security issue. Who can hear me? Can somebody zoom in? There's been some Zoom bombing, as they say. Zoom has worked very hard to heighten their security, and that doesn't happen anymore that I've heard of. Also, when another downside is the client setup. They have to have security. They have to have privacy. And we're going to talk about that a little further. I always ask them if they can to use a computer or a tablet. Working with a phone is very difficult because right now, for instance, Barbara, I can just see the top of your head.
You're right.
Eyes upwards. So if you're working,
iPhone.
but if
iPhone.
you're working with a client, you want to be able to see them all, and you need to explain that to them.
Right.
And same for you. You're working in an office, so it's not a good idea to work with something you have to hold up or prop your phone up. They need to see the whole of you.
Well, you're talking about doing FaceTime on the phone,
Well,
right?
no, I won't do FaceTime. I won't do FaceTime. I can't see enough of the client. I've focused so much on the client with their skin tone, with their eye flicker movements, with how they use their hands. I can't reach them, and they can't reach me that way. They've got very limited view. This is my point of view only. Also, you want to be able to hear the low responses, particularly when they're in hypnosis. Their voice sinks down. So it's ideal, computer or tablet. And the quiet, uninterrupted place where you are visible on screen and they are visible on screen. And again, we may be used to, in the clinic, getting up to reach over for a glass of water or reach over for a pen or something, but you have to be almost static. And the other thing I'd like to add is that you're probably not going to be able to take notes on your computer because it clicks. And you need a pen and paper. You have to go back to the beginning and using pen and paper. For those of you who like to take notes on the computer, even if you have a separate screen, I have 2 screens, but I would never use it because look what happens, right? I'm turning away from you. I'm breaking connection, which is not what you want to do if you're building rapport. So think about that. The
I have a quick question. I'm sorry. My name is
Yes,
Joanna. I'm new to
Yeah.
the group. I have a quick question. Do you request the client to use headphones with a microphone?
whatever is convenient for them. If it's comfortable for them using headphones, and if they have ambient noise around them at home, like babies crying and stuff like that, for sure, yes. Whatever's comfortable for the client, I don't mind either way. The good news also about this is you have the ability to work with clients worldwide, from all over the world. The only limitation is time limitation. You know, I have clients in Australia, which means it's a 12-hour difference. So my morning is their evening, and vice versa. By the way, if you're working with clients, and this is an aside, if you're working with clients who are in the other part of the world, make sure when you send them your confirmation, you give them a confirmation of time in their time zone.
Sure.
Not yours. It's very easy to forget that because we're so used to living in our own world.
Georgina, we're kind of losing your face. You're getting cut off on the bottom. So can you?
How about that? Look at that. Let me move that. That's so funny. Thank you. I'm getting intense
We're
here.
getting half of you.
Yes, no, that's no good. Okay. Send intake forms ahead of time. I always take deposits for Zoom clients, non-refundable deposits for Zoom clients. And on the intake form, of course, you put your usual caveats of confidentiality, not replacing medical treatments, et cetera. But also, you want to tell them that they need privacy. If they have roommates or partners or animals, don't come in the room in the middle of the session. As cute as dogs and cats are, it's not a good idea to have them sitting on laps or walking across. I've had a cat walking across over and on the other side. And, you know, we're used to saying, any sounds you hear take you deeper. Any feelings you have across your shoulder just take you deeper into whatever, you know, we use whatever we can. Also, when they're working with you, turn off the phone. I won't let them use their phone. Why? Because it's disruptive. Even if it buzzes, even if they get flashing, it's disruptive. They wouldn't do it in the clinic, so why would they do it online? And also check the camera where they are. Make sure they know how to use Zoom or Skype. Let them practice before they come on. And make sure that they don't do what I did, which is this. Make sure that they really stay focused and centered so you can see all of them. And if they move their hands, you can see their hands. That's why we need a bigger picture. What else was I going to say? Yeah, get comfortable with the technology. Get comfortable with the lighting. Make sure you're not backlit. Your face should not be in shadow. And it's the same with your client. You want to see them. You want to see what's happening. You want to see their eyelids flicker. You want to see the color of their skin change, if it does. You want to see if they're on the edge of tears. You want to see how they're breathing. We have to learn to use the screen as it were the clinic, as if it were the clinic. Don't ever put up with second best. If they can't get a good picture or they can't get good lighting, make another session, book another session. You wouldn't put up with second best in your clinic. Why would you put up with second best online? The other thing is I encourage them not to move around, be stable, And for you, work from the same place every time. Make sure it looks like your office. Make sure it looks professional. They're paying you to be a professional. Make sure your environment looks like a professional place. Don't have laundry hanging in the back. Not that anybody does. That's an example, right? It can happen. It can happen if you live in a small apartment and that's all you've got. So make sure that it looks professional. Some people use virtual backdrops.
Yes.
In theory, they work well. In practice, quite often they don't. As you move, your body begins to morph into it and it's disruptive. So think about that. Yeah, I found that 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours is maximum for people sitting still in therapy under scrutiny on a camera. Greg may find it differently, but that's what I found one-on-one with hypnosis coaching, counseling, and the other work I do. So you need to practice maybe, and you'll get a sense whether people are getting tired or not. You'll get a sense of whether they're used up or not, because this working on Zoom takes more energy. It takes more effort, takes more focus. You can't really relax. The client can't relax, even though they're going into hypnosis. They know they're on camera. There's always a part of their brain that knows they're on camera. So be aware of time and be aware of their energy and what they're capable of, how much they can absorb, how much they can do at any one time. Yeah, as I repeated, no phones, no pets. Another thing, working from home, no Amazon delivery. Make sure that you don't get any doorbells ringing with delivery people. You're working at home. These things happen and you can't always control it. So do what you can to be aware and plan different times. Of course, you have coffee and tissues near, coffee or water or tissues nearby. And just as you would in the clinic. But remember, this is all you have. And it's so much simpler. It's so much more pleasurable. You don't have to travel to the clinic. You don't have to worry about weather. In Toronto, we have weather right now. And the clients love it. Once they're used to it, they just love it. It feels safe. They're at home. And as long as they obey the boundaries you've set up, everything's fine. Any questions? Any
That's good.
concerns?
That's great.
Oh, one more thing. Oh, yes, before I do that, I'll get to you in a minute, Joanna. What happens if you freeze or the camera freezes, either for you or the client, or it goes down? One of the things that I ask up front is, what's your phone number? Where can I reach you? How can I reach you if the connection is broken? And we talk about that up front. That's part of the upfront talk. What I'm going to do occasionally, Zoom doesn't go down. I've not had Zoom go down. We do get what I call stuttering, visual stuttering sometimes, which is what you were talking about, Kiki. And what we do is I just wait, because usually the sound catches up with the visual and the visual catches up with the sound. I wait for like 30 seconds. And, or if it doesn't, I say, would you mind saying that again, please? It passes very quickly. I've not had it pass for any length of time, any bad length of time. And if it does happen, it's Zoom. It's not the connection. Sometimes Zoom gets overloaded, particularly on weekends. Sorry, any questions? So Joanna, you had a question.
Yes, I had a question. What do you do when they need to go to a restroom in the middle of the session? That's one
go.
thing. Yes,
Well,
but do you like coach them and say, I will count from 1 to 3 and then you'll be able to go, or how you do that? What's the process? And
well,
also,
first of all, I tell you, when they come in and we talk and we chat, and I say, have you been to the washroom, been to the restroom? Because, you know, you might want to go. And they say, well, I've already been. I said, you know what? I'm going to be like my mum and say to you, try, go again. So off they trot and back they come. And yeah, usually doesn't happen, but if they need to, then you just say to them, I count to 3, and at the count of 3, you'll open your eyes, go to the washroom, wash your hands, come on back, and go back into hypnosis. Nod if you understand. And off they go.
Was there more you had, Joanna, in your question?
Yes, I had a session where with a client where we got disconnected through Zoom, and what happened was I kind of had a feeling that that might happen, and during the induction, I mentioned. In the process of the induction, I mentioned if we get disconnected, you'll be able to go back to the same link and reconnect again. And that's exactly what happened. The client was able to press on the link and we were connected immediately, pretty much.
But that's pre-talk. That's good pre-talk. Yeah,
Very good.
indeed. Yeah. Any other questions before? Yes, Chris.
I guess wait a minute. Oh, I didn't, I should have been muted. I hope I don't insult you, but I would be really, you probably wouldn't accept me as a client
Why?
because I wiggle.
Oh, you can wiggle.
Well, I heard things that you said that would have scared me if I heard those. I thought, I'm not going to go to her. She would, yeah. So
Well, you can wiggle, you can move around. That's fine.
and then I also say is, when I'm a client, I almost all the times have my eyes closed. So it would afford you more wiggle time. So I don't want someone else to be afraid of moving.
Why did I say you couldn't move?
Kind of said it.
Hmm?
I heard it. I'm sorry. I'm not even a member, so I'm just,
No, that's fine. That's fine. No. I'm not saying you can't move. What I am saying is you don't get up and leave the screen. Or if you're carrying a laptop around and you're in a group, and I'm sure Holly's going to talk about that in groups too. When you're moving around, it's distracting for other people. Moving the computer around.
He's encouraging the therapist to be steady and focused. So
I can understand that, but I really thought that you wouldn't want me as your client because I'm like
That's fine. I expect it. I hope clients are animated. I hope that especially when we're doing intake.
okay, well, I just okay. I shouldn't have mentioned it.
You can mention it's okay. I'm very hard to insult. Been in this business a long time.
So this is Donna, Chris and
Hi.
Georgina.
Hi,
One of the
Donna.
reasons why it's unlikely that I am going to do virtual because I want to see the full body of the client. I'm thinking
Yes.
about a past life regression today. What was
Yes.
going on with her fingers and her hands were clues for me to take the session a different way. And since I can still legally and safely, I've got an office configuration that minimizes any risk, and my hands are raw from cleaning before my clients come in. There are just so many negatives that I feel. So I'm still one of those saying, I just don't think I can do my work the way I do it and be able to make the kind of connection with my clients that I make if I'm doing it with limited images and not being able to see all of their energy field.
Supposing I said, I agree with you. I felt exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Because I'm very touchy-feely sort of person, you may have guessed. But what I'm finding is if you have a reclining chair and you can see the client, let me move back here and I don't knock my screen over. You can see the client in the reclining chair with the hands on their lap. That's pretty good. It's enough.
But not everybody has a reclining chair. I mean, now it says, here's the criteria for you to be my client. You've got to have a quiet room. You can't have a dog barking. Your phone can't be in the same room. Nobody can come to your doorbell and ring it. I mean, it just seems like there's so many interferences. If it's impossible for us to see a client in person, I could see the emphasis on the virtual. But if we have the option, I'm concerned that we as a profession, I wouldn't want us to get so caught up in this is convenient for me. If it's if it's has the potential for causing any harm to the client or
Right.
not doing the best that I can give them.
I think that
What
if
would
I
it
can
cause,
address
and why
that,
and how would it cause harm?
yeah, your intention is everything.
Yeah.
And you can clarify the intentions you have to address those issues
Yeah.
of possible impediments in the therapeutic process, and think about them, and then ask that they be eliminated, or that the connection with the client be enhanced, so that what does occur is perfectly appropriate for her or his healing. And so notice what concerns you have, and then I don't want to dictate your spirituality, but you can make a prayer beforehand as to what you would like to have happen, and the kind of protection you'd like to have come in for that person, given those possible scenarios that you listed.
I think COVID has made a big difference. I never used to do regression work. I would never think of doing it online until COVID came to New York City. I don't see patients in my office. I haven't seen patients in my office since March. All my therapy sessions are online or
Yeah.
visual. But because of COVID, that made a dramatic difference.
Yeah.
Ranjit, you had a question?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about camera angles and stuff too. And when, you know, when Donna, we were mentioning, you know, obviously as people who take care of people, for the most part, it feels really good to be with the person.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And vice versa for them with
That's a
us.
lovely, that's a lovely,
Yes,
that's a
yes.
lovely way of
Right.
looking at it.
You know, I'm in a position where I haven't, most of my practice was all in person as well, and I've been wanting to try to transition online for in some way for a long time, because I knew I would have to be moving around at some point. It's been 9 months since I've worked, and it's been 9 months since I've been able to see any of my clients, and there's a lot of limitations. And even right now, I have an elderly dog that I'm surprised he's not barking right now. But so my point though is, if you can still see people in person in a safe way, lovely. But if you can't,
Right.
I would hate to have people go neglected and not be able to get sessions. If there is a way that we can adapt and make it safe and loving, you know, for them, then I think it's, you know, there's some compromises that have to be made sometimes. Like maybe I can't see their fingers, but I can see their eyelashes, and that can still, you know, using my intuition throughout the session, I can read into what I can read into while I'm there with them. And like Greg was saying, setting up all the you know, intuitive support along the way, all the subconscious support in the beginning, since we're dealing with hypnotherapy anyways, we're helping the client build those things for themselves to be able to have these sources of strength, and we're guiding them through it. So even though it's not perfect, because I would much rather be in front of people, absolutely. And I'm kind of answering my own question a little bit, you know, which is like, we got to do our best with what we have. I would love to astral project over and literally be able to see their whole self, and maybe that's the answer.
Good
You know,
idea.
we all need to get better.
Yeah, we need some classes on that.
Yeah. But anyways,
Or a recorded session.
yeah.
Can I just mention that Donna, I think it was Donna who had the concern. I've had a client on a couch, and I've had a client on a bed or a day bed, and they set their laptop up in such a way that I can see from the top of their head to probably mid-thigh. So if you have a client who can't come to your office for some reason and you'd like to work with them, you may be able to have them configure themselves in that way so that you can still see their body, or the length of most of their body, and any nonverbal cues you can get from that.
Yeah, I think it's right that if I was going to do it, I would just be selective with which clients,
Of
that
course,
if it was the best thing for them.
of course. We always worry about what's the best for the client. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this business.
Yeah. The concern that I have is, how is this going to change how we see clients in the future? Are people going to now I don't know if expect is the right word, but prefer virtual environments. So how is that going to affect us in the long term? Because they're now getting used to it.
Well, they have a choice, and we have a choice. So they have a choice too.
Right.
So our whole perception has widened. So you can have it on Zoom, or you can have it on Skype, or you can have it in clinic.
I want to respond to
Some
that.
people have
a little
special days for online and special days for clinic. So all my online clinic clients are Tuesdays or whatever, right? And the rest of the clinic.
I'm in the Bay
Holly,
Area,
yeah.
San Francisco Bay Area, and I get these emails as a marriage family therapist from about maybe like 100,000 people that kind of network through these emails, and people are bailing right and left in terms of offices and making a choice to completely go virtual right now.
Yeah.
It's a sign of the times. So I think we are going to have a different normal, and those of us who can maintain an office is great, but a lot of people just don't want to do it anymore.
I have people come to my office, which is less than a mile from my house. And I offer them the option of virtual versus in the office, whatever they feel comfortable with. And many of them come because they want to be with someone in person. And so the way I work it is, you come in the building, you have to be wearing a mask. That's regulation. And when they come in, no hugging, and I have them sit like about 5 feet, 6 feet from me and work with them. And that's just kind of worked out because the office is that way, has a configuration. And so it's flexible. I see maybe still a third of my people in the office in person, and I treasure that.
Can I add something?
I'm sorry?
In the future, if you have interest, I do a complete different technique than most of you, which I call waking hypnosis or conversational hypnosis, using a lot of neurolinguistics because everybody enters their own trance in a different way. So therefore, there's much more control in that technique, working with people, particularly if you're counting them down or up. You don't necessarily need to do that, but learning how a person thinks, it doesn't take long to just guide them, and you keep guiding them into it more so it becomes an experience. So if that's something of the interest somewhere in the future and you like that, I'd be happy to do one on that. So just throwing that out.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay. Holly, how are we doing?
Good. We ready to move on to something different now?
Okay. Anything else you have, Georgina?
No, it's fine. If there are any more questions, I'm available now or later.
I have a question. You said you have weather now in Toronto. What is it? Is it snowing?
Yes.
Oh,
And very cold.
I'm sorry.
It's going to be snow tomorrow morning. You look so sorry, Greg. Yes.
Okay, so Holly's going to talk to us about ethics and legal stuff and groups.
Okay, so we'll start with groups, and there are obviously some advantages to working online. First of all, your class size is not going to be limited. If you've got a physical space where you're doing classes, that's going to determine how many people you can accommodate. So there's a potential for bigger classes. There's potential for referrals from private clients from those connections you make with your students. You get a broader audience because the range can be the world instead of your city, your community. So you'll have an opportunity to work with diverse populations. And we often get inquiries for past life therapy through iBert. People want people in specific locations, and 90% of the time we don't have anyone in those locations. So it's an opportunity for all of us to potentially have clients that really want to do the work that don't have people available in their vicinities. The disadvantages of working in groups are that you can't have the physical connection with the student when there's an abreaction going on in class. If you're doing a group hypnosis and someone's having difficulty, you can walk over to them, you can have a little one-on-one connection with them, you can ask them what's going on and support them, take them out. You don't have the option of doing that online. So part of what I think is important before you do online regressions is to take a good amount of time to train people on how to be self-empowered and do self-care when they're doing the work in a group. And I've got a whole bunch of ideas I'll share with you on that in a minute. So first of all, there's an issue of confidentiality to get group confidentiality so that people's regressions, if they're shared, will not be shared over dinner the next night with their family. And that's very important for the safety of the group. And if you are going to record, get permission from everyone to record and let them know specifically what the recording will be used for. And Georgina had mentioned about the built-in software for protection of intrusion online. I don't know if Skype's gotten into that yet, but Zoom now has protections so that you won't be intruded upon by people hopping in the middle of your.
Skype has that if you buy the corporate version.
Okay.
So, but not the individual.
And the reality is any online activity has the potential for breach of confidentiality. You know, there are people that have ways of getting in on just about anything now. So that needs to be disclosed for the client or the student ahead of time. So to build in the safety, a lot of things were mentioned by Georgina to help that. But the safety can be both the physical safety, the emotional safety, and then the energetic safety. And I was really delighted to hear what you were saying, Greg, about the energetics of this, because we are literally working in the quantum field. This is quantum field energetic work. And I don't know if those of you who've been doing online work are probably starting to develop even more sensitivity to that energetic connection, because you've got more capacity without all of the environmental things for your attention to take you away from the client's presence, but to know that that quantum field is actually being activated and to engage it as a support. And I have a reference of a book for all of you that we will be sending you in the note after session today that talks about the quantum field in the classroom and how the learning is incredibly enhanced when the quantum field is utilized. And of course, non-ordinary states of consciousness is what brings us to that. So that'll definitely be emphasized. And because of that, there's an opportunity for people who are intuitive to have bleed through experiences in groups where people experience each other's past lives. Has anybody had that experience where people share a past life, or they have the same experience? They go, no, that was my life. No, that was my life. How could it be both of our lives? This comes up a lot in groups. And so I take time when I do any group work to do an energetic protection. It comes from a system through the work of Alice Bailey. And I will give you guys in the materials that I'm sending you just a brief overview of how to do that. There are hundreds of ways to promote protection, but to actually include it before you do a hypnosis process with a group will enhance that containment that we all need to have our own experience, to have safety, and to have our own sovereignty as we do the work. So another thing for building in support and protection is to give everybody the right to pass, that they do not have to participate in the sharing if they choose not to, and to not let people volunteer each other's to share. So only take responsibility for yourself in the group. Don't try to promote your friends to, come forward or be a guinea pig or anything like that, so that everyone again has their own sovereignty in the group experience. And before you do any regressions, I think it's important to help build in each session some skills and tools for self-care. And I recommend something like doing an anchoring process with everyone for calm and relaxed, so that if something comes up and they need to leave the experience in trance and come out of trance, they can go to that calm and relaxed anchor. I also think it's really important to resource your clients and students before they do the work in a group, so that they can have access to their inner healer, their higher self, their power animal, their spirit guide, whatever format they're going to give it, so that they have an inner support for that inner hypnotherapist to work with, since you're not available to be there for every person and know what every person is experiencing when you're doing a regression. So those are some ways to support the physical, emotional, and energetic safety. Also stress that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, and that in groups, their inner hypnotist is in charge. The facilitator doesn't know what each person's experiencing or needs in the process, and I can't meet individuals' needs. So you have to coach people that they have to do that for themselves and to trust their own needs and to honor those needs as they come up. So then we're going to go into preparing for the regression. How do you get people prepared? I like to do a little warm-up session or practice session with groups. And the point of it is to give an experience of what hypnosis is for those who are newbies, but it's also to help people discover their own inner accessing, whether they're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. One of the biggest fallouts that I've seen doing regressions over the years is that people have a very strong expectation to have to see the experience rather than feel it or know it. And that, I think that if you address that up front with people, people will have more success and feel more comfortable with the work that they're doing. You can talk to them about, I use the avocado, the AVKTO, and where they're dominantly accessing. And in support of that, as you're languaging for your regression processes in group, make sure that you're not being specific all the time about which modality you want them to experience, to be more general about it. And that'll keep it open-ended so that people can have more of their own inner experience and validated. So we're going to talk about self-empowerment, self-care, and what to do if they get into a situation where anomalies would happen. And some of the anomalies might be that they have the kaleidoscope effect, where more than one past life comes up at the same time, and that they have free will to make a choice about which of those lives they're going to choose and focus on in this process they're engaged in. And to coach them that they do have the choice always of where to go and how to respond. If they don't feel comfortable with it, they can come out of trance at any time. They can go off on their own tangent if that's where they're going and not even follow what the process is, that they have that freedom. And with the higher self or an inner resource accessed in the trance process, they can feel safe to go where they need to go and trust themselves more easily. Another anomaly that happens a lot is people go to sleep in group regressions. They go to sleep. They're really not asleep, but what they are experiencing feels like sleep. I know they're not asleep because when we count them out, they come out with everybody, but they don't remember what they experienced. And if you're doing a day-long or a series of regressions with people, each time they go into hypnosis, they'll most likely go deeper and have an easier experience of letting go into it and have more potential for going to sleep or going into somnambulism states. So one of the things that I've used to help people who have that experience, because they're very frustrated, they want to remember their experiences, is to not let them sit with their back supported, but to sit the straight back so that they're going to stay more alert. And I've actually had people in groups have to stand up to do hypnosis because they were going to sleep every time. So they go stand in a corner, lean up against the corner and do their trance standing.
Go stand in the corner.
Yep, that works. And then there's the person who's going to have the experience that nothing's happening in a group. It's not working. I can't go there. And this is where the discussion of make it up, trust yourself, let your imagination come into play is a good strategy. Talk to them about the different theories of what past life work might be, and that only one of them is reincarnation. There are about 7 or 8 different theories about what this is, and the imagination is included in these theories as a definite potential for creating your hypnotic experience. And I talk about, if it's your imagination, it's still your psyche making it up. So just go with it and work with it as if it's a metaphor. That usually helps people get a little softer about their feeling like that nothing's happening, and something will usually start to move. And then the whole thing about making it up, or I feel like I'm just telling you about the movie I saw last week or the book I read in history class. I think I'm just remembering that. Say, fine, it's your memory. It's your psyche that's remembered it. So just go with it as well and give yourself a chance to work with a metaphor of what's coming up. Let's see. Next, the what if technique. What if you could see your feet? What if you could know if you're male or female? And that will often get people warmed up to opening that unconscious door and having more of a flood of information and images come. And if the monkey mind takes over, which is also a big thing for beginners especially, have a discussion about the multi-levels of consciousness and how all of those things can be happen simultaneously in trance. You can hear the phone ring, your nose can itch, and you can be walking down a cobblestone street all at the same time. And the question is, using your free will, what do you choose to focus on? You get to make this your experience. So you coach them around that and ask them to give themselves permission just to go with what is engaging their most interesting focus and to let it unfold from there. Another anomaly that will occur is that sometimes because of the quantum field, the client or the student is ahead of the regression. They've gone ahead and are responding to things that haven't even been brought up. Or sometimes they're lagging in it. So give the students permission to go where they need to go. And if they lose track of the regression process that is being guided, it's okay just to go with what's coming because that's where their psyche is taking them. And if they don't feel comfortable with that, they can always self-correct and refocus their awareness to what's going on with the regression itself, with the process. Do not allow people in a group to go for their biggest issues because you're going to open potentials for more abreactive work. And if this is not an ongoing group and people haven't got a skill set yet of being a client, doing regressions, you want to have the focuses to be contained and safe, especially for beginners. And I've got a list of ideas for you of different focuses for beginning regression therapists, regression therapy clients. Their core issues and their big issues should really be handled in one-on-one sessions. Predict that any of these experiences can happen and most likely will happen. And that will normalize all the anomalies that can occur. And it's really important that people have a chance to talk about their experiences after. I'll talk a little bit about different group sizes and different styles of doing group work. And that would basically delineate which kinds of support you're going to give after a regression, depends on the size and how much time you have. And just to give you an example, in doing regression work, you could have a one-night open to the public event where you introduce people to past life therapy. Another option would be to have a day-long or weekend workshop introducing people to past life therapy. In a weekend, there'll be a lot more time for people to share and a heck of a lot more time for people to start to develop some skill. We all know that doing this work as a client is a skill just as much as doing it as a therapist is a skill. So the more you do it, the easier it is to access, the more you can trust it, the more fluid the experience becomes, the more vivid the inner experience can become through practice. And doing it over a day or a weekend has an advantage because of that. But may also be that people's boundaries loosen up a little bit and they tend to go for more abreactive work. So that's something you have to talk to them about in terms of structuring the sessions. Working with languaging is always important for us as facilitators. It's especially important when you're in groups because you won't know whether your clients are visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. So I recommend as much as you can to use open-ended questions like what's happening, what are you experiencing, be aware of your environment, to not get specific about it. If you're going to get specific, make sure that you're including all of the modalities so that everybody can have an experience. Then we'll talk a little bit more about formatting the type of regression group work you'll do. If you're doing a weekend, it'll probably be a series of regressions. And if you're doing a one time, it'll maybe be 1 or 2 regressions. But another format could be an ongoing group that you would do that maybe meets once a month. And that would give your students a chance to build in a learning set and a depthful capacity to do the work in groups. They're going to have the safety of the group that they are getting to know. They're going to have the experience that they can trust from doing it over and over again. And there'll be an opportunity for check-ins periodically about how the work is integrating and questions that come up between sessions. So that's a real viable way to put together a workshop online, to have it be an ongoing thing. One of my graduates, who is also a teacher of mine now, who's here tonight, has been doing for 5 years monthly meetup groups for past life work, and she's had to go online. Maybe she'll have a chance to share with you guys later a little bit about her experience of building the networking between these people and the skill level of the people that attend. She still has beginners, and she still has to go through some of the basics, but the group process has deepened immensely over the time, and the students have come back over and over again because it's been so much fun. And so, you know, and I guess enlightening would be a good word for it.
Good.
Okay, so the sharing after a group is important. And I think there are 2 layers of sharing that we can emphasize that will really support both the healing from the work and also the skill of doing the work. What I usually do after a session is ask the clients to share what came up in the hypnosis itself that you want to address. What happened that were anomalies? Where did you get stuck? What did it feel like or look like for you to be in a particular part of the session that was problematic for you? And we can talk about the skill of being a client. And then we focus on the content of the regression, the healing of it, the lessons behind it, what you're taking from the experience that you want to integrate. And those 2 areas are really, really important, I think, to honor in a group.
What I have a question. What
Yes,
have you
great.
experienced in doing the groups virtually in contrast to in your office or in the
Well, the things I think are the difference is that there have to be a lot more self-care, a lot more self guidance in the work, and to structure that by going over all the anomalies and doing the things I'm talking about to help people prepare to do the work before you turn them loose. And the most important thing, I think, is the resourcing, to make sure they have resources so that if they get in a tight spot, you can help them. I also ask in a group if anyone has any phobias before I do any inductions, because I had a group situation years and years ago where I did the famous go on the back of a bird into a past life technique. And I had a bird phobic in the class, and she started screaming in the middle of the induction, literally. And I was able to go over her, get on the floor, because she was on the floor, and say, "What's going on?" She says, "I'm terrified of birds." I said, "Okay, you got a Pegasus." And she shut up. That was it. But see, I can't do that online. I can't have that individual connection that's sometimes necessary. So you've got to mitigate any problems that could happen by super educating them about their responsibility, their resources, so that they can have the self-care and always bring themselves out. So the topics for regressions for groups that are for the beginners would be sessions that would be structured around the most creative lifetime, or the most loving relationship with family, or the most empowered lifetime, or the most self-actualized life, the most joyful life. The interlife work for the current lifetime would be helpful in a group like this. The life purpose kind of regression, relationships and soul agreements types of regressions, current life gifts and challenges or opportunities that you want to explore, and then meeting the guides and the Akashic record work. So those are generic. They're more benign than the affect somatic bridge of going back to the source of your trauma. And I think they're more appropriate for groups, especially if people don't have a lot of inner trance experience under their belt. And remember that this is really supported by what Greg was talking about of the quantum field, that we are in that quantum field, and there is so much potential there for healing if we invoke it, if we ask for it, if we intend it, it's there. It's very profound. And I've seen this not only, you know, in doing regression, but in teaching my hypnotherapy classes online now. I am astounded at how deeply people are going to do this work now. It is just blowing my mind. There's almost like a titration of energy that's happening online that I never saw in my classroom. So I know there's something different going on. So that's the group work. And before I go into the ethics, does anybody have any questions or comments you want to make? Greg, I can't see everybody, so you can see.
Susan Lyons.
Anybody have a question or a comment?
Yeah, Susan Lyons has
Yeah.
a question.
Hi,
Yeah.
Holly. I
Hi,
just
Sue.
wanted to make one additional comment. I'm the person that's been doing the past life group for 5 years now at HCH and in this last year, obviously now online. One of the things that I ran into very early on is that some of the people were joining group and having not showing their face on video and just having their name. And I found that to be, for me as a hypnotherapist, but also other people in the group, which nobody mentioned this to me that was joining the group, but I didn't feel that created a safe environment, that you have somebody behind a name, but just being a looky-loo while people are sharing personal information. So I actually now, when I send out the Zoom invite for the monthly meetup, I have some protocols that I state in the invite. And that is giving time and space for everybody to share. And then also they must have their video turned on for the pre and post discussion. If they want to have it off during hypnosis, I'll leave it up to them for that. But I just felt like it makes a more contained and safe environment for us all to, it's more cohesive for us all to be seeing each other. So I just wanted to kind of, I found that really early on, and it kind of changed the dynamic once I set that kind of message to everybody.
Holly?
I just wanted to say, Susan, I was one of the people that did that in one of those first classes. And sorry.
I wasn't even thinking about, I wasn't pinpointing you.
How would you know?
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to point that out because I agree, but I was one of the people who did it and didn't think it was an issue because I was just watching a class, but makes sense now.
Yeah.
Another issue is
Sacred
people walking around with their phones and being in a class. And I literally had someone in my last hypnosis training who was in his car driving back from Arizona online. And I said, you can only do it if we can't see you because we were all getting seasick.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Any other
I
questions?
kind of make the rules as we go along here still, for sure.
We learn as we go.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you, Susan. That was good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have
Anybody
a
else have anything?
I have a comment, I guess, or a question.
Michelle?
Yes.
I
Go
guess
ahead.
I'm reminding folks to utilize the chat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have found that when I'm running groups too, that's just another way to get people to share. You know, like in person, you would have people do dyad sharing or share with your partner, you know, different kinds of experiential exercises you can do during regression, during past life workshops and things like that. But it's actually not a replacement, but a kind of a nice option to have them share with everyone, you know, through the chat while you can continue to sort of facilitate and stay on track. You know, that's a good thing. I also wanted to ask about, maybe it's that you're going to bring this up later, about marketing. So I don't know if that Holly takes it off track, a different track, but what are the ways, the best ways you found to reach people? Because it's a crowded marketplace for online events now, and they're like a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, and if there's any, you know, I know you have to have a following and have a list, but what's been successful for people?
Yeah.
And just remind people, like, Zoom's been around forever, not forever, but for many years before the pandemic, and it is definitely, the whole world is on Zoom. It's like millions of people. So
Well,
we got to stay relevant, adapt and stay relevant.
I was looking at that question for myself because all of a sudden they disappeared. I had no clients for a week or something, or maybe just 2 or 3. And so I went on and looked at my website and how many hits on the website and when they came and so forth. and noticed that it was not really mobile friendly. And so I did something to address that, but I haven't even finished it. It was when I went to address it that all of a sudden I got swamped with new clients. They just showed up.
That's called cosmic marketing.
Yes. Well, I had asked, I said, would you mind bringing them all in now? You know, because I'd like to see them and help them. And I've found over the years, 20 years doing this, that when I do that and I go into altered state, relax, and ask that the divine bring me the people that need to see me. And I think about them coming to see me and how I feel about them even beforehand, about having the experience with them. And they show up. And I think that's the best marketing, because otherwise you're trying to manipulate the rational mind and the rational world that really doesn't give a damn what you think, or, you know, and having good technology, a good website that is mobile friendly is of course important, but it's what your expectations are, your intention, and how you pray to have people come and to be with you so you can help them.
And whatever you do to create your private practice, you have to do for your groups as well and your teaching as well, you know, whatever venues. Certainly the internet's the way these days, though. I mean, I'm not spending $1,000 a month on Yellow Page ads anymore, thank God. You know,
Right.
it's much easier. And Facebook, I'm getting close to 70 here, and I'm not that techno savvy, but I've had to get with it here. You know, I've hired people to help me get on Facebook, get that going, and it's made a difference.
I found that past clients and past students are your best way of marketing.
Mhm.
Referrals are the best.
Yep. And get yourself on YouTube. Get your services.
YouTube, yes, lots of YouTube.
Do some taping of yourself and do some recordings that can be available on Spotify, and all these ways are great ways to market. So we didn't really talk yet about Zoom and the capacity for breakout rooms, but that is
Rashad had a
huge.
question.
Huh?
Rashad had a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just curious. I remember you were saying something earlier about doing groups online. You open up the availability to have more people show up because you don't have like the capacity issues with a room. But I'm just curious, for those of you who have already done groups like this, especially if you want everyone to have the opportunity to share, what is generally for like a one like a 2-hour session, whatever, versus a day versus a weekend, like where do you generally want to keep it? And then also, what do you think about doing pre-recorded lessons for people, so it is something that can where it's not necessarily a sharing experience, but it's still being guided through and learning how to do the regression therapy?
You had about 5 questions there, so so let's see if we can cover them.
I tried
to. So what was your first one?
Just as far as capacity wise, like what do you think is like the max that you would do for the day?
Well, I just took a class with 400 people on it, and they had breakout rooms so people could have discussions after the lecture part was given and the group discussion was given. So if you've got the breakout rooms, you can have much smaller groups. And tonight we debated on whether we wanted to have a breakout room and have the 3 of us facilitate little discussions. We decided we probably wouldn't have enough time for that, but that's an option. And the breakout rooms can be as big or as small as you want them.
But wouldn't you normally need to have a facilitator for each?
And you would ask people who are more experienced to co-facilitate.
Okay.
So if you've got somebody who's come to your group 4 or 5 times, you'd ask them if they would help with some of the basic stuff that might come up. And then you can always bring people back and at the end and say, are there any leftover questions that weren't able to be addressed? So that's just one way to organize it.
Okay.
And then what was your other question?
I think thoughts on doing like regression, or I mean, I guess just hypnosis in general, pre-recorded type thing. So like, because you were encouraging that it's important for everybody to get a chance to share. I guess also there's a way to have like Facebook groups and whatnot, even if you're selling pre-recorded things, so people can still share with each other.
Or meetup groups that are just for sharing.
Okay.
You know, when I do my recordings, I've got recordings on Spotify for past lives, present life, future life, inner life, all that stuff. And what I do is I take a lot of time on those CDs to educate people ahead of time, so that that education is included, and I give them tips on how to navigate and what to do if, so that they can do it on their own and start to develop some kind of skill at it and start to feel safe with it.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's go into the end of the legal issues. The ethics, I think we've addressed all along in terms of do no harm, you know, the safety issues we addressed. But the legal issues are a little dicey, and the legal issues are dependent, number one, on what credentials you're advertising that you're doing your past life therapy under. We've got a few licensed therapists in the group here. We've got other people who are certified hypnotherapists. We might have a few ministers. Your credentialing is really important because of the legal distinctions every state has about what you can practice and what you can't practice under what credentials. So for instance, if you're a clinical psychologist and you're doing past life therapy, you can practice past life therapy under your license in any state in the US. If you're a marriage family therapist, like I am and licensed, I can only practice what I do in California. I can't see a client in New York and do therapy with that client online. If I do it as a certified hypnotherapist, I have to check in the state of New York to see what their requirements are to do hypnotherapy in New York. If my requirements satisfy that, I can legally see a client in New York. If my credentials don't satisfy that requirement, I can't legally do that. So the notes that I'm going to send to you guys through email after we're done has a website address with the Hypnotists Union that has all the regulations for all the states on it. You can put in, you know, to go to the website and look up the state, and it'll tell you what the requirements are to practice hypnotherapy. And I know Kiki, who is in, what state are you in, Virginia?
New York.
Yeah, tell us about your experience with your credentialing.
My experience. Well, I am not a therapist according to the state of New York. I have done the training. I have not done the clinical. So I'm a certified consulting hypnotist. New York does not require a license to do hypnosis, but if you are not a certified mental health practitioner in the state of New York, you cannot use the word therapy, therapist,
Hypnotherapist?
Any form of, yes, hypnotherapist. You cannot refer to regression therapy. I do regression journeys. We also cannot use any diagnostic terms. I cannot ask you, are you anxious? I cannot ask you if you are feeling paranoid. Any diagnostic phrases, even stuff that, you know, you talk to somebody on the street, obviously wearing masks, you know, I'm very anxious about today because, that's fine. But in my office with a client, I cannot use the word anxious.
Okay, now what happens if you want to do a past life regression with somebody in Arizona?
You know what, Holly, it never occurred to me.
Well, you are certified hypnotherapists, right?
Yes.
Okay, I believe in Arizona, because there is no requirement in Arizona, from what I remember, you can practice being a hypnotherapist in Arizona because that's reciprocal in that state.
But I can't call myself a hypnotherapist.
You can't in New York, but you can if you're seeing somebody in Arizona.
I'm still in New York.
You're still in New York, okay.
Yeah.
But you could provide hypnotherapy to someone in that state and not call yourself a hypnotherapist.
And I could do past life regression with someone in Arizona. I do have a client who's in Ohio right now.
And what
How
do
are
you
they
call
doing?
If you call yourself a past life regressionist, or you call yourself a spiritual consultant, you call yourself that something that is not a licensable thing,
yes,
you can practice in
call
any
myself
state.
A life coach.
Mm-hmm. So just be aware of what your credentials are, be aware of what your restrictions are in the state where you are credentialed, and then see if it's reciprocal in other states before you do online sessions out of state, just to
And
protect yourself.
This website that you're going to send us will give us that information?
It gives you information for hypnotherapists. Most of us
Oh.
consider ourselves hypnotherapists. The licensed people will have to go to their regulations in their states. I can't,
Okay.
you know,
What
speak
about
to
other
everybody.
countries?
Well, that's a good question. I don't believe hypnotherapy is
just-
regulated in any other country, but that would be something you'd have to look into.
Especially since we're broadening our connections. I might be working with somebody in another country, which would be cool. But, you know, because we're making that connection now, I have to make sure that what we're doing together is okay in that country.
And you might need to have the disclosure. For instance, I can't practice therapy out of state, but I can practice hypnotherapy out of state. So I would have to have a disclosure stating that I am not doing psychotherapy. I am in the role as a hypnotherapist. I will not diagnose, treat, or prescribe.
Right.
Okay, so all of you need to look at your own situation. That'll be unique to each of you. And if you want liability insurance, if you don't already have it, I have a link that I will send you to a company that will insure past life therapists. It will insure ministers. It will insure shamanic practitioners. It'll insure hypnotherapists. It'll insure licensed people, all under one umbrella. So you can have, like if you're doing EFT and they won't, some insurances won't cover touch therapy, EFT would be covered in this. It's Langton Corporation, and I'll give you the link for it.
Great.
It's about $200 a year for full coverage, so it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions
Okay.
about that?
Any other questions around ethics or legal stuff? I guess we have to not use that term, legal, right?
Well, there are legal issues. You know, the scope of practice is the primary one, and that
Right.
your licensures if it's required. The rest of it's ethics, which we covered pretty well, I think.
Okay, this is good. Any other questions that anybody has? All right, any answers?
I hope
Just
so.
kidding. Well, we want to thank you and very much all of you for coming. And Holly, maybe you could sum up what the board's looking at doing and how we're doing with this and other gatherings that we've considered.
Well, we want you as participants in this organization to volunteer yourselves to show up and do some workshops and presentations on behalf of all of us. And some of these presentations will obviously be just for regression therapists, but the one tonight was really open to other people that don't even do regression therapy, because it's valuable to anybody that's a therapist. So we'll decide if it's just for our organization or if we want to open it to others. I think there are about 10 people here tonight that are not IBERT people, but have, you know, networked through all of our different organizations to join us. We're happy you're here. And we're going to have an ongoing newsletter that Georgina and Kiki are working very hard with. I hope you guys all got the first one that they did. It's our first edition. And our website, if you haven't perused it, is definitely looking at, especially if your professional page is out of date. A lot of you have really old pictures, really old information. It's time for a facelift on your page on the IBERT website. And we're going to have this workshop available as a link through the cloud so that you guys can review it or share it with other practitioners if you want. And we'll hopefully get a library of our meetups that we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything else, Holly? Yes. So
Sharon?
I think there's background music rising up now.
Sharon, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just waving.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I thought we were signing off.
Everybody feel complete for tonight then?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This was great. I'm glad you started doing this, and it really adds a lot of value to membership. It really
Great.
does.
Excited about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a delight for us on the board to start having regular meetings because we realize how isolated we feel doing this work.
Yeah.
And, you know, to have other colleagues that are in it as deeply as you are to share with is really a very rewarding and fun thing. So let's keep this going. Put your energy in, give your expertise to all of us as a presenter, and we'll see what comes up next month. Maybe we can have one next month. We'll see. Everything's in place to keep this going.
Can you share our email addresses with each other and websites so we can network with each other?
Well, all of that's on the website. If the
For members,
IBERT website, and all of you who are IBERT certified have a page where all of that information is available to you to network with everybody else. And if you want to just have a networking meeting, that would be one thing we could do as a meetup. Just have a free form meeting, so we could have breakout rooms. People could share their
great
experiences. It doesn't have to be about content. It can be about just sharing and, you know, having collegial connections.
Might be fun every couple of months to have a party.
Happy hour.
You know, bring your own booze and. You know.
Well, let us know what you want. We're listening.
I just want to tell you, I don't know if I'll ever see you again, or if I might come back, who knows what. But I had a workshop, this was in the 80s, and we had a come as you were dinner.
I've done that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was
I did that for a book launch for my past life regression book.
You did what?
I did that for a book launch when we did a book signing in the bookstores.
Cool.
People who came as you were, and the best costume got a free book. You know, so that was great. Yeah, that was 3 years ago.
I did my training, my initial past life regression training with Henry Bolduc, and he had a come as you were party at the end of the training, and he came as Bridie Murphy.
I'd rather come as I want to be.
Come as your future life.
Yeah. The other thing is, just also the newsletter is looking for articles. If you have something that you would love to share and write about for about 400 to 600 words, some concept, some idea, some way of working with clients, just forward it to us, and either Kiki or myself, and because we're putting together the January, February issue, and or if you think it better in the spring, because that's a spring forward idea, then send it to us also. Okay.
Also, we're doing
Ideas,
book
we'll
reviews.
use it whenever. We also need, if you've got a book that has a connection to the work that we all do, we'd love to promote your book. Yeah, we've got a lot of different research projects. We'd love to hear about research projects.
Yeah.
We can put them in the newsletter. So
has anybody done link ups where you intentionally got people to the same place?
What?
I had one of my first experiences was with my husband, and I have one with a girlfriend where we definitely got to the same place, drew pictures, and had conversations, being in the same place. It's quite interesting.
Couple
got me hooked.
One of my favorite ones was a little girl who came in for therapy with her mom, and the presenting issue is mom said she doesn't want to let me mother her. She wants to be the mom. And I said, well, let's do a regression. They went back to a concept where the little girl was the mom.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was mutual hypnosis. They were both in trance, and they both had the same experience. It was really
do you deliberately say go to a life you've shared together, or go to a life and then it becomes one where they're together?
Well, it was specifically around the feeling of you know, she doesn't want to be the kid. You want to be the mommy.
Okay, I'm going to
bless you all. Have a good holiday.
Yes,
nice to see you all.
Healthy and safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
for showing up.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're done.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.
Bye.
You hanging out for a reason, Georgina? You want to talk? Janet? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I was just trying to, yeah, Samantha's still with us, so another time.
Yeah, okay. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Uh-huh.
Bye.